Hey guys, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you a brief description of how implantation occurs in with a human blastocyst. So this is a follow-up lecture to the lecture on the early cleavage that occurs right after fertilization, over the first 5 days after fertilization of a human egg. And so now it's time for this egg, which has emerged into the uterus, to implant into the wall of the uterus, because that's going to be absolutely necessary for the embryo to grow to a full-term baby. All right, so let's see what's going on here. All right, so what we've got here, these are the images from the class board. On the left, this is kind of what represents the wall of the uterus. So on the left of this brown line, that's the wall of the uterus, and to the right of the brown line, that's the inside of the uterus. And what we've got here is we've got this blastocyst, which has emerged into the uterus. The first thing that needs to happen before implantation can even occur is that this blastocyst must undergo hatching. So the uterus has released these hatching enzymes, and these hatching enzymes dissolve the zona pellucida. Remember, that's just this blue circle, which is a protective covering around the blastocyst. If this hatching, it really must occur at the perfect time. If it occurs too early and hatching happens while the egg is in the oviduct, this could lead to an ectopic pregnancy where the embryo implants into the wall of the oviduct. That's going to be really bad because it's going to trigger a lot of blood vessels to grow in the oviduct, and the oviduct can't handle this. As these blood vessels grow, that could cause a rupture, which could be fatal to the mom. Now, if hatching occurs too late, that means that the blastocyst is no longer in the uterus, and it's left the female womb, so that's obviously not going to work out for a viable pregnancy either. So the timing of this hatching is really important. And studies have shown that if hatching occurs at the wrong time, that's actually a common reason for why a female cannot conceive. All right, so after hatching occurs, we have this blastocyst, which is exposed, and it's going to tumble down the wall of the uterus. The first stage of implantation is called opposition, and this is when the blastocyst must be correctly oriented relative to the wall of the uterus. In humans, this means that the green cells, which represent the cells of the inner cell mass, they must be positioned towards the wall of the uterus. Not specific to humans. In mice, it's the opposite. The cells of the inner cell mass have to be positioned opposite of the cell wall, but in humans, opposition occurs like this. The second step is adhesion. During adhesion, we're going to have proteins that lock the blastula onto the endometrium of the uterus. That's what these little red lines represent. So they're going to lock that blastula in place. The third step is called progression. And progression is really interesting because basically the trophoblast cells of the blastula are going to invade into the wall of the uterus. They secrete these enzymes that dissolve the cellular connections between the cells that make up the epithelium of the uterus, and that allows the trophoblast cells to invade into the wall of the uterus. Think of the trophoblast as this invasive tissue. After it does this, the trophoblast is going to differentiate into two different types of cells. The first are going to be in dark purple. These represent the cytotrophoblast, and that represents those dark purple circle that is covering the cells of the inner cell mass. And then secondly, we have the syncytiotrophioblast. These syncytiotrophioblast, and so these cells are going to be in pink, and these cells are this big multinucleated mass that kind of spreads out through the wall of the uterus. Now, this syncytiotrophoblasts is going to secrete some really important hormones and proteins. The first, it's going to secrete HCG, which stands for human chorionic gonadotropic hormone. And HCG is important because that tells the corpus luteum not to degenerate. Remember that corpus luteum is the leftover cells from the follicle that ovulated the egg. The corpus luteum, if you remember from the menstrual cycle, has the job of producing progesterone. Without HCG being released from the syncytiotrophioblast, then the corpus luteum will degenerate. That's not good because we still need that progesterone to maintain the pregnancy. So HCG tells the corpus luteum to stick around, keep producing that progesterone, which is necessary to maintain the pregnancy. Added to which, those same cells are going to release a protein called BMP2, and BMP2 promotes the development of blood vessels in the wall of the uterus. These blood vessels are obviously going to be needed to nourish the developing embryo. By day 8, the process of decidualization is occurring. This is when the uterine stromal cells, which are just cells that are hanging out inside the wall of the uterus, these are cells of the uterus, they become uterine decidual cells. These uterine decidual cells have some really important jobs. First, they're going to suppress the immune system of the female and of the mom. And this is important because the embryo is a foreign body. You know, its cells contain cellular markers that are not the same as the cells of the mom, and the mother's immune system will attack the developing embryo if her immune system isn't suppressed. So that's the job of the uterine decidual cells, to suppress the immune system. In addition, these decidual cells are going to promote the growth of lots more blood vessels, which will grow towards the developing embryo to deliver nutrients to ultimately help with the development of the embryo. All right, so that is about it. Now, before we end, one more thing I wanted to mention is that during this process of implantation, the blastula is undergoing some further cell divisions. And that's what we're going to cover next time, because we're really approaching the stage of gastrulation, which is the next step after cleavage. It's going to start occurring around day 13 or 14. But by day 8, implantation should have been pretty much finished, and that's going to set the stage for the next event of development, which is called gastrulation. And just as a quick preview, gastrulation is when these cells of the inner cell mass are ultimately going to differentiate into the 3 layers of cells: the endoderm, the ectoderm, and the mesoderm. All right, so we'll cover that next time.